From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-legged beasties.
And things that go bump in the night.
Good Lord! Deliver us.
Deliver us.
Hello there, spooks and spookettes. CountDrahoon here, and tonight I present to you yet another edition of Interviewed by a Vampire. I'm very excited about tonight's guest. As you know, your Count loves to talk about movies, but what I bet you don't know is that I also like to talk a little smack, particularly about those mythical beasts that roam the deep crevices of the internet, known as the lol cow. Tonight's guest has content that dabbles in both subjects. No pun intended, of course. She is the host of Once Over with Cayley, in which she has movie talks with some of her friends, movie reviews, and she does a great highlight reel of her DVD hauls in local stores where she goes out and buys Criterion Collection titles and just random other stuff. She is also known by her alias as Lucy Tightbox on the show Who Are These Podcasts? A show that breaks down and makes fun of the worst podcasts on the internet, and they do a pretty good job of poaching those lol cows, such as Stuttering John Melendez, Opie from the Opie and Anthony Show, and my personal favorite, Woke Dad. You can also catch her on the All Apologies podcast with Trucker Andy, another Who Are These Podcasts regular. It is my honor to present to you Cayley. Cayley, welcome to CountDrahoon Presents.
I am so excited to be here. My very first interview with a vampire.
Wow, and you managed to say the name of this segment in the interview. That's high dollar marketing right there.
Let me tell you, I have been enjoying your interviews with vampire segments so much. I've been really enjoying them. So you're doing great.
Cayley, you're so kind. I appreciate that. Is there anyone, out of curiosity, is there one in particular that sticks out to you?
I really enjoyed I think it was with, I can't remember his name now, but it was the After Hours Cinema one. You guys were talking a lot about public domain movies, and he was giving a lot of insight into those, and that was so interesting for me.
Lee's a great guy, and yeah, he's a good friend of mine, but he's also sort of a mentor because he's been more, I've been around for a little bit, but really last year is really my actual foray into traditional horror hosting where I'm actually showing movies and doing silly sketches. But Lee knows almost everything, I would imagine. So he knows all the tricks of the trades, and he knew about movies to get access to that I didn't even think about. So
yeah,
I'm glad you liked that one. I imagine that you've probably have seen some of the movies that Lee talked about in the interview, which kind of leads me to my first question. Where does your love of film come from? And do you have like a favorite film or a favorite genre? And I know for a film buff like yourself, that's a very difficult question.
Yes. My love of film, I have no idea where it comes from. I think that it sort of comes from my first ex-husband. I did not grow up in a household where we did movies. My parents loved the Marx Brothers, so I grew up on the Marx Brothers, and I watched a little bit of the Three Stooges, but my parents were just never into movies. It wasn't a part of their daily lives. They didn't do a lot of TV. That just wasn't really a big part of their lives. So I didn't get into movies until much later. I enjoyed movies, movies. But the thing that really sold me on them was my ex-husband was a huge movie buff. And so he and I started going to the movie theaters every single day. We would go to there. I live in Rochester, New York, where we have an incredibly rich community when it comes to movies. We have the George Eastman House here from Eastman Kodak. And so we have this beautiful movie theater that shows old films all the time. And we used to just go to the movies every single night. And I think that's where I really started diving deep into what excited me about film.
I love listening to all the little gateways that we have. You know, for you it was the Marx Brothers, and you know the I'm also a big Three Stooges fan myself. So I recently I hosted a movie that was part of a series that stemmed from a film that's tagline was, "If you think the Three Stooges is too highbrow, this movie's for you." It was something I never thought I'd ever say out loud.
Was it the Ritz brothers who was in that? That's
Oh God, well you would think that's a great guess. No. So the I'm sorry, I'm deviating and making this about myself. So
no, please.
I signed to a new YouTube channel where I'm hosting movies, and it's called Kings of Horror. And my first film that I presented on the channel was called Son of Piggyzilla, and it's part of a sort of an indie comedy short series called Caesar and Otto. And I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they used to make a lot of these short films like 10 or 15 years ago. And most of them would start, you know, Caesar and Otto, da 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 da. So the very first one was Caesar and Otto, and that was their tagline. But then all the subsequent sequels to Caesar and Otto, like they would have cameos from either Lloyd Kaufman or Debbie Rochon. One of the movies that I'm showing in this season of the presentations that the channel's doing actually stars Ed Dennehy's real life younger brother.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and there's a great joke about it because he plays Dracula, but it's not actually Dracula. It's Steve Dracula, Dracula's younger and less famous brother. So,
It's dumb and
It
it's
sounds
corny.
amazing.
but yeah, but it's the things that I live for. So, but anyway, so do you have a favorite film, or are you one of those where it's like, you know what? I'll give you a genre, and here's my top five.
So usually when people ask me that, my answer is Stand By Me. I feel like Stand By
Okay.
Me is the movie that got me interested in movies, and I had a giant crush on River Phoenix when I was younger. Um, but that's the movie that made me understand that movies could both be fun and playful while being serious and diving into deep topics. And it was what kind of drove my love for both idea of a coming of age story, but also voyeurism in film. You know, this is a Stand By Me is a movie about a group of kids who are trying to find a dead body, and they are looking, they are on the hunt, and that I think was really pivotal for me when it came to enjoying movies in a different way, not just putting it on as background noise, but rather enjoying it because it was cinematic, because it was art, because it was interesting. So that's always usually I answer that question. Is that actually my favorite movie? I have no idea. I would say I love another really high up one for me would probably be The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, which has Helen Mirren in it. I love that movie.
Mhm.
Um, I hate it's directed by Peter Greenaway. I hate all of his other movies. So why do I like that one? I don't know. Maybe it's because Helen Mirren is naked in it. I have no idea why I like that one so much, but boy do I.
Well, right. A Helen Mirren nude scene that goes without saying. So it immediately puts you in the top 10, bare minimum. No pun intended. But so with your channel Once Over with Cayley, which I am a subscriber to, and Spooks and Spookettes, you should subscribe as well. What was the light bulb moment for you to say, hey, you know what? I love movies so darn much. I want to start talking about them.
Yeah, that was actually Um, maybe one of the scariest things I've ever done is starting a YouTube channel. So in 2021, I set a goal for myself, and I suspect you get into this loop also. In 2021, I said, I am going to watch 365 movies that I have never seen before. I always rewatch the same movies. I've seen
Mhm.
Stand By Me 200 times probably, with no
Mhm.
hyperbole, probably around 200 times I've seen that movie. When I find a movie that I love, I just want to rewatch it again and again and again and see new things in it. And I realized that I was never checking out anything new. And so I said, you know what? I'm just going to only watch new movies. And so in 2021, I met that goal where I watched all of these movies that I had never seen before. Some of them were good, some of them were bad, but I ended up watching 385. So I exceeded my goal, which I was very proud of.
Wow. Mhm.
And going into 2022, I needed a new goal. I was like, I'm not going to set a new goal for watching movies. I've already done that and met my
Mhm.
goal. So in 2022, I was actually chit-chatting with one of my coworkers, and he said, you've seen so many movies. Why aren't you reviewing them? And I thought to myself, well, you know what? I could start reviewing movies. Maybe that's something I
Mhm.
will do. In general, when I am reviewing a movie, I just say, yeah, it's good. I liked it. Or no, I really hated that one, but I never gave it any real thought. So it
Mhm.
was kind of a challenge for myself. I had never been in front of a camera. I had never worked a camera before. I had
Mhm.
never edited. I didn't even have a computer that was powerful enough to be able to support editing software. So I had to buy a new computer. And it was this big challenge that I kind of set for myself as a goal. And I said, I'm going to try to do one review a week. And sometimes I've met that goal and sometimes I haven't met that goal, but it's been something that has allowed me to start viewing movies in a different way, which is one of the reasons I've been so excited to continue doing it.
A new movie every week. And there's a lot to go back and watch for sure. But how often do you watch newer releases at the movie theater?
Hardly ever. It's very
Really?
sad.
Okay.
I wish I got to the movie theaters more frequently. When it comes to reviews on Once Over with Cayley, I try to review movies that I'm familiar with
Mhm.
because I like to be able to have a chunk of thoughts. I want to be able to really get into the nitty-gritty with it. And when movies are in theaters, it's harder for me to review them because maybe I've only seen it once, maybe I was in a movie theater where I couldn't take notes. So I have doing this movie review channel has had wonderful benefits for me. I'm enjoying the heck out of it, but it also means that all of my time is rewatching movies that I've already seen before, which
Right.
means I hardly ever get to the theater. So I have not seen any of the current movies that are in the theaters right now. I do want to go see the new Ari Aster movie. That's like on the height of my list of things to go see in the theater right now.
So, I had a note here about uh, your DVD hauls. Um, I'm curious specifically with the Criterion Collection because that's one thing you and I have in common. I am a sucker for Criterion Collection. I every July and I guess now every November, I stock up like the world is ending tomorrow.
Yes,
Um, so from your last Criterion Collection haul video, did you end up going back and getting more?
sort of.
Okay.
So I went to, and actually I have them here, so maybe I'll reveal what I got. Um,
Sure.
so let me just pull these over here. So after the Criterion Collection haul, I had a couple of ideas of other things that I wanted, and I was like,
Mhm.
I really shouldn't spend the money. But there's been a couple of things on Criterion that I've always wanted, and every year I tell myself I'm gonna buy that one, I'm gonna buy
Mhm.
that one, and I never buy it because I'm like, well, I already own it on DVD. Do I really need to spend the additional money? What if I get this other thing? But I actually went to a used movie store locally here, and they had 4 Criterion movies in their section.
Mm.
And so I happened to pick up 3 of those 4 movies, which I was very excited about because it's Criterion movies for less money. So I ended up
Sure.
getting Thief, which I was really excited about. I
Ah.
I just saw this for the first time and fell in love with it. I actually
Mhm.
talked with Ryan Rebalkin, who does the Director's Chair Network. He
Mhm.
was doing an entire series on Michael Mann, and so I watched this in order to review it with him. Fell in love with it, said, I gotta buy that. And then every year for Criterion, I'm like, I'll get it next year. I'll get it next year. But I
Okay.
grabbed that, and then I got Brazil, which I'm
Love
also
Brazil.
very excited.
Mhm.
This is another movie that made me fall in love with movies. I
Mhm.
mean, there's almost nothing better. I don't This is a near perfect movie. It's a near
Yeah,
perfect movie. If
I
not
would agree.
entirely. Terry Gilliam is just amazing.
It's funny because the first time I saw Brazil, I was simultaneously reading 1984 for the first time.
Oh God. So you had an emotional crisis.
Oh well, right. I mean, I'm a creature of the night, so I sort of thrive on this sort of thing. But yeah, even then, it pushed me to the limit for sure.
Yeah. And then the last one that I picked up was Barry Lyndon. So I was very excited. I got each one of these was $10, so I got a very good deal on some Criterion stuff, which
Oh
I was
yeah,
very
that's a good
excited about.
deal.
Yeah, so Linden is the only. It's one of two Kubrick films I have not seen.
I like Kubrick, but
Mhm.
I I love Doctor Strangelove so very, very much.
Yes.
I always think that I don't like his movies, and then whenever I rewatch them, I'm like, "Oh my god, this is amazing. This is miraculous. Of course everybody loves this." But when I think back on them, I'm like, it's all right."
Well, let me ask you this because I want to help you out a little bit. Do you think maybe it's because like subconsciously it's like you don't want to give like a film student answer, you know?
Yes.
Or as we should probably call the stuttering John film student answer.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
know.
We know that Citizen Kane is not the best movie of all time.
That is exactly, you are 100% correct. And I think that I struggle with that. I imagine that you do as well. When we're talking about movies, we love them. We love them so much. And we want to
Yes.
sound intelligent when we're talking about them.
Mhm.
But also, one of my biggest pet peeves is the stuttering John answer. It's when people
Exactly.
talk so above the head of others that they're almost gatekeeping something special, that
Mhm.
they're almost being pompous about it. And I actually
Exactly.
this just reminded me of one of the most awful experiences that I ever had in a movie theater. Was There's another local theater. We have a couple of different local art house theaters, and there was another
Mhm.
local theater, and they were doing an entire month of giallo films,
Ooh, I love Joe.
which was wonderful. I was very
Mhm.
excited. And one of the films that they decided that they were going to screen was, what is it? Stage Fright. It's like Stage Fright, The Age of Aquarius. I always forget the subtitle of that movie. But
Okay.
that is a 1980s movie that I would not necessarily call a giallo film. It
Mhm.
does have some of the stereotypes. You see the big black gloves in it.
Mhm.
And I had seen this film before, and so I was excited to see it on the big screen, and, I was all excited, and I was excited about how they were going to connect it to being giallo, and I took a couple of my friends to the theater, and they did a nice introduction before the movie, and I expected them to explain to the moviegoers what giallo meant,
Mhm.
because, of course, there are tons of people in this audience that have never heard that term ever before.
Right.
And they didn't explain it. They just kept talking like they were film students and like everybody
Mhm.
should know what I know and I'm so smart and look at me. And so after we left the film screening, I asked my friends, "Do you know what giallo means?" And all of them said no. And I was like, this is the problem.
I'm glad you said that because that's also a pet peeve of mine.
And I think that was one of the things that kind of kept me out of really getting into movies for a very long time, because I used to go to a lot of black and white film festivals. I used to go to nitrate film festivals, a lot of silent film festivals,
Mhm.
which we have access to in our area, which is wonderful. But I would go there and everybody would be, a PhD student studying film, and they would only want to talk about, and I would mention things like The Bicycle Thief, and they would snub their noses at me, and I'm like, That's a
Right.
perfectly reasonable movie to talk about. Why are you being such
Exactly.
jerks?" Like, it's so silly that we do that. We should always want to share our love of film with everybody, and I feel like that's what you're really doing on your channel here, which is wonderful.
And it's also, to me, that is also the mark of a very immature person. Because I feel like as a seasoned movie lover, as a seasoned cinephile, you understand that like a movie is like a meal. Sometimes you're in the mood for some fast food. Sometimes you're in the mood for a great steak dinner, and those are two very different things. So one is not better than the other, it's that one is different than the other, but each has merit.
Yes.
That's kind of how
You
I
know,
look at it.
Actually, Gangrenously, who works with the Creep Off, which features both Vinnie Paulino and Carl, from who are these podcasts. He actually just did a review of Picnic at Hanging Rock with me, and he said
Mhm.
something so wonderful in that review. He said, "This movie is a mood movie. That
Yeah.
means not only does it exude a mood, but I have to be in the mood to watch it." And he
Right.
said it much more beautifully and eloquently than I just said it, but it made so much sense, and I had never really thought about it that way before.
So I started watching that earlier today because I literally just finished watching Picnic at Hanging Rock for the first time the other day. So I wanted to watch your talk about it while it was still fresh on my mind. But I'm not quite sure if I got to that part you're talking about. But I totally agree with the sentiment. There's a lot of films out there that it's just like you're just not gonna put in Eraserhead on a whim and just like, oh man, I gotta watch Eraserhead. It's been a long day.
Yeah, absolutely not. No. What are your like feel good movies when you've had that rough day? Like when it's been a long day, what's your movie that you pop on?
Lately, I love the Paddington movies.
Yeah. Oh, those are so good. So good.
They're clever, they're adorable. For a kids movie, and that kind of sounds a little snobbish to say, but they're very well done. They really are. The writing's good. I think the second one is probably my favorite out of the three because I'm actually a huge Hugh Grant fan, and I feel like that is his career best performance.
Yeah.
He is phenomenal in that movie. He really is. But of course, I'm sure a lot of those PhD students who talk about, they'd snub their nose because it's a family friendly movie and it's a movie for, that you just take your kids to see for a matinee. But I don't care. It's a solid film. And sure, it's a kids movie, but you can enjoy kids movies too if they're well done and not stupid.
Absolutely. That's I always make that same argument. Actually, the kids movie that there's two kids movies that I always recite that I think are just absolutely outstanding. One is Babe Pig in the City, which of course is
Mhm.
directed by the absolutely I'm blanking on his name now. George Miller? Why am I forgetting his name?
Yeah, no, you got it. It's George Miller.
Amazing, amazing. That
Mhm.
movie is outstandingly good. And then the other one, of course, is The Iron Giant. I think that that movie is so heartfelt and so, a lot of the time we skip over animation.
Mhm.
Animation is such an important genre and it can be so powerful.
I agree. And I used to be one of those people, but in the last couple of years, I've started getting more into animation, particularly anime. Um, well, I'm probably going to get into a lot of trouble for saying this, but I don't care. For the longest time, I resisted getting into anime, but I came to the conclusion that after finding a few films that I really love and enjoy, it's not anime that's the problem. It's anime fans.
I understand that completely.
And I listen, and I'm not saying that they're bad people or anything like that, but if you've ever been to an anime convention and you just hear and see a bunch of people dressed in their anime costumes talking about their favorite anime, they're just in their own little world. You have no idea what they're talking about. They quite literally could be speaking Japanese. I wouldn't know the difference. And then in this vast delirium, you find, since I'm in Tennessee, you find this redneck looking guy with a camo hat, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go up to that guy and talk to him because like maybe he'll like jerk me out of this and I'll be able to have a normal conversation. And I go and he comes up to me and says, "Oh, excuse me, do you know where the screening room is? I really want to see Ryume part 5 or part 6 or something." And it's just now I realize what Simon and Garfunkel were talking about in Sound of Silence. So
I understand that so deeply. I think the another big fan group that always drives me insane is the Nightmare Before Christmas fans. I don't care if you
Yeah,
like that
well,
movie or if you don't like that movie. The fans for
I
that movie are crazy.
I would say yes. I would say specifically though Tim Burton people,
Yes.
or uneducated Tim Burton people, because everybody thinks that Tim Burton directed that movie when he did not. And not to say that Tim Burton doesn't deserve credit for that movie, but he is often given a lot more credit than he deserves. Um, so yes, I remember that fad because there used to be a lot. To me, there used to be a lot of what I like to call Tim Burton teeny boppers. These goth gals that they were all either Beetlejuice, Nightmare Before Christmas, And maybe every now and then you get like the Sleepy Hollow chick, and then it was always the same conversation over and over again.
Yep.
No Ed Wood fans, no Mars Attacks fans, no Big Fish fans, which to me
Those are like
yeah, or Pee Wee's Big Adventure. It was always one of those three. So, and it almost makes you hate those movies.
Really truly does. I
Yeah.
I have talked ad nauseum about how much I hate Tim Burton based on exactly what you were describing.
Yeah. I do.
Even
I
though
will.
I do, I love Ed
Mm,
Wood and I love
Yeah.
Pee Wee's and I like a lot of his movies. I hate him.
I I I feel the same way. Like Ed Wood is on it's in my top 5 favorite films of all time, but it's so different from his other catalog that you forget that it's a Tim Burton movie.
Absolutely.
I'm still pissed at him for Dark Shadows.
I never saw that.
Don't. Well, okay, look, here's the thing. If you've never seen the television show, you'll enjoy it. It's fine. It's a campy little, it's not his best, but it's fine. But if you've watched the soap opera and you've seen the movie, you will hate it.
Because
I
Tim
will
Burton.
note that.
Because Tim Burton and Johnny Depp made a huge point about, oh my gosh, we love this show. We used to watch this when we were kids. But then you go and watch the movie and you're like, did we watch the same show? I don't think we did.
That's such a tragedy when people do that.
It is. The best joke I've ever heard about that movie was like, the movie is very much 70s.
Just vomit.
Well, now I'm a little curious now, I will admit.
Yeah, check it out. Sorry, I've digressed so much. But you have live screenings in Rochester. I was
do.
Curious about that.
I want to know. Well, I mean, for folks that are listening that live in that area, like where can they go to check it out and watch it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do live screenings. We have them halted for the summertime because it gets dark so late in the summertime, but I'll be starting back up again in the fall, probably in mid to late September. And I do them at a place called Fatty Beer Co. It is in Rochester, New York. It is on Adventure Place Street. And what we do is we screen public domain movies, which is absolutely wonderful. It is such a joy to be able to watch these old classic films with an audience, and it's a wonderful little bar. It's a bar, but that also means that we're not taking it too seriously. So a lot of the time, the people who are all hanging out are yelling things at the screen. We're all having fun. We're doing things like watching, Plan 9, but throwing popcorn at the screen and having fun. It feels very Mystery Science Theater 3000-ish.
Oh, that's a blast. And I saw you had an event poster. You were showing the Student of Prague.
Yes.
How did that go?
It was not popular is the answer to that question.
Okay.
So the way that I decided to screen that actually was I had gone, I love going thrift shopping for movies. And so I had gone to this big, huge old, media store. So they had movies, they had records, they had all of the things, cassette tapes. And I just was kind of going through their shelves and shelves and shelves of DVDs. And every single section that I was in, there was a copy of Student of Prague. And I had never heard of this movie before. And it just kept kind of like calling out to me. So I kept noticing it. So like I would be in the horror section and I would see it there. And then I would be in the classic movie section and I would see it there. And then I would be in the, and I just kept seeing it every single place that I went. And I was checking out and I had, 40 DVDs, a stack of 40 DVDs. And then I saw a little section that I hadn't looked in yet. And so I went and quickly looked through there and there was another copy of Student of Prague. And I was like, well, I guess I just have to buy this now because it clearly wants me to own it. So I bought it, and the first time that I ever actually watched it was during that screening. So it was really exciting for me to be able to have that kind of experience with everybody. I loved it. It's certainly a challenging movie to screen. I had been hoping to do a live score with it, and one of my goals for this upcoming season is going to be to have some local musicians come and for the silent films, have actual musicians play along with the movie. And I think that would be a really fun event to do. So
Yeah, no, that would be a lot of fun. I'll be honest, I haven't seen Student of Prague. I think I may have read the short story that it's based on, but I could be confusing two. Because doesn't the movie have something to do with vampires?
Or no?
I don't remember that, but it's entirely possible that it does.
If it does, then I think it's.
When you read it.
Yes, but if not, then we're thinking about two totally different things.
I do think that there are two different movies called Student of Prague.
Wow.
And I think they came out around the same time. I'll be honest, I remember very little. I have one of these fish brain memories where I just immediately I watch something and then it's already out. I'm like on to the next thing. I'm like, I gotta focus on this now. So
Yeah, you gotta keep room open for more movies to get in there.
movies. There's always more movies, dang it.
So transitioning, I forgot to mention this in my intro for you, but you are also a go-go dancer for a local band in Rochester called the Isotopes.
And
Yes.
I'm
I'm curious because the term go-go dancer isn't thrown around a lot anymore. So how does one in the modern age become a go-go dancer?
I became a go-go dancer. So I'll talk a little bit about the Isotopes. So the Isotopes, it's a surf rock band. It's an entirely instrumental surf rock band that features both Carl and producer Chris. And for people who have been listening to who are these podcasts for a very long time, also Croge. So it features the three of them as musicians. And they have been in this band for over 20 years now. And they have always had go-go dancers performing with them. It's surf rock, so there's lots of fun. We're doing the monkey and all the fun stuff like that. And I actually started working with them on the band by doing lighting and special effects. So they needed a lighting and special effects person, and I knew absolutely nothing about technology, but they asked me, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I was like, I love a good challenge. Why wouldn't I do it? So I did lighting and special effects for them for about 2 years. And then one day a go-go dancer couldn't perform at a show. And they said, "Oh, well, Cayley she knows all the songs and she's watched you guys dance a million times. Just throw her in." And I have terrible stage fright. And this was before I was doing any of the YouTube stuff. So I had never been in front of anybody ever before. I had never been in front of a crowd. And I was so terrified and so nervous to be center stage, but I ended up loving it. And so now I have been go-go dancing with them, I want to say for probably about 6 years.
Oh wow.
And it's been great. I absolutely love working with them. It's so much fun. Surf rock is not a genre of music that I would usually put on in the background, but it's so fun to explore different genres of music, and it's so fun to kind of push myself into doing fun and exciting things that I wouldn't usually do. I'm not a dancer at all also, so it's very embarrassing. I will be the first to admit that. But I have a great time and I get to hang out with some of my best friends, and I love that.
There seems to be a theme percolating in our talk today. It's like I appreciate how you just you plunge headlong into challenges, whether it's starting a YouTube channel, going into go-go dancing, and not only do you learn to love it, but you thrive in it as well. So, and then it just becomes a part of you. So I really admire that about you.
I think one of the most important things that we can do in our lives is explore new things and to push our own limits. And, what kind of a life it's one of my favorite quotes from Stand By Me. And also this quote is in Full Metal Jacket, since we were talking about Kubrick earlier, did your mother ever have any kids that lived? And I always want to be the kid that lived. I want to enjoy life to its fullest. I want to push myself. I want to explore new things. I want to, like you said, dive head first. It's scary, but it leads to some great stuff.
Yeah.
Or in the case of the Hindenburg, but that's just a one-time mishap. We don't talk about it.
We don't even need to.
So, transitioning from the Isotopes, as you mentioned, Carl, also known as Carl Hamburger, he
is the host
of Who Are These Podcasts? And you also mentioned producer Chris and Croge. And also, there's a lot of rotating guests, frequenters that are on the show. You, of course, are one of them. And of course, we also have Adam Bush, who would,
Yeah,
who's known for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and also being an accomplished musician. And you also co-star alongside a puppet named Tuki and a talking potato named Cardiff Electric. So again, like, how was this yet another challenge? You're like, you know what? Let's do it.
I think that one day Carl was hard up for a guest host. And so he said, "Hey, do you want to come on my podcast?" And I was like, "Sure, Carl, of course, I'll go on your silly podcast." And again, it was one of these things where I was just so nervous to be in front of a camera. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to talk about things. I didn't know when to talk. That was always my biggest challenge was, when do you interrupt the boys from all of their funny jokes? I was never a comedian. They're all funny. And I was always like, no, but I have like an interesting thought, not a funny thought. So it was, I think, and bringing up a puppet and a potato is the perfect way to describe it. This is such a bizarre world that I have somehow had the joy of being a small part of. It is so weird and so wacky. And when I tell my coworkers about it, I work at a law firm, so sort of professional, but also they all know that my alter ego is Lucy Tightbox, so I wouldn't call myself the most professional person in the world.
I forgot to mention that your nom de plume or your alias, however you
So, but I tell my coworkers like, "Oh yeah, I was doing a podcast with the potato," and they're like, "What words are you even saying right now?" It is so wonderful to see the incredible talent and creativity that we all have in this podcast world, and that includes you with what you're doing. I mean, there's this incredible, wonderful, beautiful, exciting portion of creativity that exists both within the Dabbleverse, which Who Are These Podcasts is a part of, and also within the movie review communities. And the fact that I get to surround myself by these amazing, talented, creative people, that's what gets me up in the day, I mean, some of them are idiots, let's be honest, Carl, but overall I love them.
I'm gonna clip this and put it out there.
He'll enjoy that.
Yeah, it's fodder for marketing. Yeah, I've been watching Who Are These Podcasts, and something I haven't really had a chance to talk on my show about, but I do love watching you guys explore the jungle that is the internet and finding these, shall we say, very interesting shows. And the characters that you meet along the way, because what fascinates me, and I know I'm one to talk, but just the people that you all find, your Harrison Youngs, your Lisa Boswells, and Catherine Johns. It's just like you watch this and you're like, is this a cartoon?
It's truly amazing to me to be able to watch the world. I mean, it's almost like when you go to, a mall and you people watch. That's almost what we're doing on Who Are These Podcasts, is we are bringing people watching to your living room. It's so cool. And I think Harrison Young and Lisa Boswell are both the perfect examples. A lot of the time when people hear about Who Are These Podcasts, and the premise of Who Are These Podcasts is kind of to roast bad podcasts, which doesn't sound like the nicest thing in the world. But when you see your Harrison Youngs and your Lisa Boswells, these are such wonderful, beautiful humans. They're just nice and pure of heart. And the reason that we get so attached to them is because they are nice and pure of heart. When you find somebody that is lovable, how do you not want to know what's going to happen in their lives?
No, I legitimately shed a tear when I found out that Lisa Boswell passed.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. She was so wonderful.
She was. And but so we have this contrast of watching these, as you say, these beautiful, wonderful people like Harrison Young and Lisa Boswell, rest in peace. But then we also get to watch the decline of folks like Opie. I guess that's probably a stretch to say that Stuttering John has declined because there wasn't really much of a floor for him to fall through in the first place.
You went,
But
"Oop."
right.
But but speaking of, because since you brought it up before we started recording, because there is, in the Dabbleverse, there's a lot of overlap. I mean, you have your channel, of course. You come on to Who Are These Podcasts, and even with all apologies, Andy is a frequent guest, and a lot of times you two are on at the same time, and so that sort of dovetails into that, and then the Blind Mike project, and so on and so on. It's huge. That's why it's a Dabbleverse, because it really is a universe. But one of the things that got me interested in your channel, and that just kept me glued to Who Are These Podcasts, particularly when the subject of Stuttering John comes up, was the review that you and Carl did for Stuttering John's, I guess the one and only feature film that he starred in, One Too Many, and that's 1, TWO, is it TOO many? I probably screwed all that up. But yes, it was National Lampoon's, which, has a great history of, for their magazine and their film. But I would say that they probably produced this movie right at the beginning of their decline.
I would agree.
And so all they had left was Stuttering John. And they had a couple of famous cameos in that movie. I guess they paid him a decent enough day rate. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about that, because you said something that piqued my interest about how intimidating it was to work with Carl on that particular review.
Yeah, it really was. So that was when, at that point, I had been doing movie reviews for a fair amount of time, but
Mhm.
I hadn't ever done anything that people had watched.
Mhm.
I knew at this point, and when we all start out YouTube, you're putting out a review and 15 people are watching it. And that was
Sure.
kind of where
Mhm.
I was at. I knew nobody was watching what I was saying. Nobody cared about what I was saying. I was getting zero attention on the internet. And I knew that when Carl came over and we reviewed Stuttering John's movie, I mean, Carl effectively put John back on the map after his fall from grace. And
Yes.
I knew this was going to get watched. I knew I was going to have a huge view count for this, unlike anything I had ever seen. And so I was terrified because I didn't have a good camera. I didn't have microphones. And here Carl is a professional podcaster coming over to my house. And despite the fact that I've been friends with Carl for many, many years, I had never really podcasted with him at this point.
Mhm.
We had never, and he certainly hadn't come to my house to do anything. And so I changed the whole setup of my room. I asked one of my friends who was an audio engineer, like, can you give me some microphones? I don't even know what to do with microphones. We didn't have any microphone stands. So I ended up just putting microphones on my fireplace mantle, which was the dumbest move that I could have made. I ended up losing a whole bunch of the video footage. So Carl had to come back to my house twice to film. It was the first
Oh.
time that I had ever lost footage. And I mean, it was a nightmare. And again, I
Mhm.
knew, I was like, people are going to actually watch this. It has to be good. I have to make something happen. If it can't be perfect, it has to be good enough. And to this day, I do not mind reading comments anywhere about myself. I read the comments everywhere. I read the Reddit comments. I read the comments on Who Are These Podcasts. When I go on other people, when I go on the Shuli Network, I read the comments over there.
Mhm.
It never bothers me. Either comments bother you or they don't. But the
Mhm.
comments on the One Too Many review, they always bother me because I worked so hard and I
Mhm.
knew that it was, even though we had some interesting commentary about the movie, I just knew that I had bit off more than I could chew with that
Mhm.
review. It was too much. I wasn't a good enough reviewer at that point, and I wasn't good enough at audio, and I wasn't good enough at video, and I hadn't learned enough. However, I needed to strike while the iron was hot, which is why I wanted to
Sure.
do it then. So I look back at that review now and I'm like, I'm so glad that I did it because it really pushed me to make myself better. It pushed me to get a better microphone, to get a better camera, to feel more comfortable when I'm talking to people. Um, but it did not turn out great. I mean, it was super fun to make
I,
it. It wasn't the best review of all time.
Well,
I
I think you're being a little too hard on yourself because frankly, like I enjoyed it, and we've look. I'm preaching to the choir here. We've all been there and done that. There have been times where your count has I've screwed up on on getting the footage lost or accidentally deleted or it got corrupted. It happens. You know, it happens, but I don't know. For me, it's like just kind of watching the progression from one too many to, just what you put out this past week when you're and I'm so sorry for remind me again who your friend was who you were speaking with about picnic at Hanging Rock.
That was Gangreniously from the Creep Off. He does a whole bunch of background work for the Creep Off.
Right. So, but I mean, just seeing the progression from there. I mean, I just I've thoroughly enjoyed. I mean, that was my starting point was that particular video, and just I've enjoyed the ride ever since.
And I will say something that was very meaningful to me about that review. That review has always been kind of like a sticking point for me because
Mhm.
again, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what other people are saying about it. How I feel about it is, oh, I could have done
Sure.
so much better. Um, but I will say that I did have a really interesting experience. Actually, so we hosted a live event called DabbleCon. So at the second
Yes.
DabbleCon, at DabbleCon 2, um, there were a group of people who I won't name, but there was a big group of people that all said after the event was over, we're all going to go back to this Airbnb and we're going to watch One Too Many. Do you want to come with us? And I kind of groaned. I was like, I never want to watch this movie again. But, it's the nice thing to do to go, I've been invited to this place. I should probably go and hang out with some friends that I don't get to see very frequently.
Mhm.
And so I went back to watch it and I planned on staying just for 10 minutes and then coming up with an excuse to leave because the last thing I wanted to do was rewatch this horrible movie. But it was this big group of all Dabbleverse people, and they're all watching the movie, some of them for the first time, some of them have seen it before. And they started making comments that I had made in my One Too Many review.
Oh.
And I was like, and I knew that they had all seen my review. Like I was aware that
Mhm.
they had all seen that review. And I realized for the first time, that was like the first time that I felt like an influencer. Like my
Yeah.
words that I had said had made an impression on other people's brains. And then they remembered those words and then they were making that commentary themselves. And I was like, oh my God, I did it. I impacted people. So
Mhm.
despite the fact that that review is still a sticking point for me, um, it is a very meaningful review for me. And again, it's always great working with Carl. Despite how much I love to make fun of him, he is an incredible professional who makes everybody he brings the best out of everybody.
I'm sure he's not tuning in right now because he's too busy taking a nap.
Yes,
Um,
he must be. Or playing the mandolin. We don't even know.
That is pretty amazing that he plays the mandolin. I'm not going to fault him for that. But
What-
anyway,
all you have to do to watch him play the mandolin is come to any of the Isotopes Christmas shows. He plays the mandolin every single Christmas.
if I find myself in Rochester, New York around Christmas time, I will do that. But sometimes it's hard to get the wings to flap, to get up that way. But we'll see. If anything, I'm keeping my eye out for another DabbleCon because I've been wanting to go for several years. So you guys were in Las Vegas, I think, for DabbleCon too, and I wanted to go because I.
Yeah, Vegas was actually Hackamania too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
but
But
still, like,
usually the DabbleCons are in Rochester. I'm hoping that we do for DabbleCon 3, we did a electronic event. So we did it was a streaming event. I am hoping that we return to the in-person stuff because I love meeting people in person. I mean, that's the joy of the Dabbleverse is that
yes.
we are all a big group of weirdos and we never get to talk about this stuff with each other. And I
Yeah.
love that we have this kind of community, and all I want to do ever is meet people in person and be able to actually talk with them about the weird stuff we all love.
Well, hopefully you'll make your way down to Nashville again because I know you guys
You guys were
Yeah.
here.
about 2 or 3 years ago. So that would be pretty. That sorry, I can't talk. That would be pretty nice.
Yes. I would love that.
So, you know, while we're on the subject, we've beat up on Stuttering John quite a bit, and for those who don't know who that is, he was a what you call a whack packer on the Howard Stern show back in the day, and he somehow landed a job as a writer and announcer for the Tonight Show with when Jay Leno was on. Of course, we use the term writer very liberally because but that is I should say a self-professed writer for the Tonight Show and for the Howard Stern show, but he was the announcer. And ever since then, he had a stint with the Stephanie Miller radio show, and then after that, he just sort of fell off the face of the earth until Who Are These Podcasts brought him back to public consciousness, and it's just been a fascinating deep dive into vanity, into mediocrity, and questionable hygiene habits.
Yes,
to say
that is the
and
perfect way to describe it.
alcoholism.
Can't
So
forget that one.
so
John falls into a category on the internet. A lot of the kids use it nowadays. The lol cow or LOL cow, depending on how tomato you want to be. My question is for you, since you're an expert. Well, for who is your favorite lol cow, if you have one, and what's one that drives you up the wall?
So for sure, my favorite lol cows are always the ones that are likable.
Mhm.
And I think that probably my favorite right now, at least, I guess it probably always changes like favorite movies do, but I really love Harrison Young. I think that he's so likable and so wonderful and such a goober all at the same time. He is such a goober. Like I could watch him. Yeah, I want to snap with him. And I just met him for the first time.
Mhm.
We just did a live show in Boston, which was wonderful.
Mhm.
And we brought Harrison Young out for it. And he snuck a kiss from me on stage, which was a little bit of salty and a little bit adorably. But one of my favorite things about that moment was after we got off stage, I went over to him. He had already sat down at his table. And I went over to him and I said, Harrison, I just wanted to say that you did a really great job. And he looked at me and he goes, I know. And then just continued watching the show. And there's something about his self-confidence that just draws you into him. And he's never a jerk about it. He's never,
Mhm.
he's not making you feel bad in order to make himself feel good. And that I think is what makes a really exciting and wonderful lol cow is somebody who is just bringing you joy as opposed to bringing you sorrow. And on the flip side, my least favorite lol cow has got to be always, 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 always Stuttering John. He is a deplorable, mean-spirited person. He is mean to people that I love. He intentionally tries to hurt people. And another big person that we focus on, and especially now, Stuttering John at this point has kind of gone off the internet. Another big person that we talk about is Opie from the Opie and
Mhm.
Anthony show. And I don't find Opie as compelling as John. And I will say the reason for that is because John is so disgusting and so awful and so horrible and so mean and crass and disgusting that it's easy to make fun of him because
Mhm.
he's all the worst things in the world.
Right.
Opie is just kind of a doofy idiot.
Mhm.
And they have a lot of similarities, but the big difference that I see between the two of them is that Opie is not a mean guy. John, at the drop of a hat, John would take the opportunity to dox me. I don't think that Opie would.
Mhm.
And so I even though I wouldn't call Opie my favorite lol cow, but I
Mhm.
certainly see the merits in him as a person. And so it's sometimes it's challenging for me to see him as a lol cow because I kind of, even though I don't like the content that he makes on the internet, I kind of like him, I think. I don't
Sure.
know. It's a little maybe that was a little bit of a ramble, but it's hard to identify the differences between what makes somebody good and what makes somebody bad.
let me throw this out there. How do you, like, if you were talking to a Martian, they were watching your show for the first time and they didn't really know what the concept of a lol cow was. Like, how would you? What's the best way to explain what it is? Like, I guess like a simple criteria, and then how does one avoid becoming a lol cow?
That's so interesting. What a great question. I think that what it comes down to, oh my God, that's such a good question. I think that I don't know that I could single down one criteria, but I think that
Mhm.
what it comes down to is it is somebody who is dislikable for one reason or another.
Mhm.
And in addition to being dislikable, they are putting content out on the internet that is bad for one reason or another. So again, Opie falls into the lol cow I, ideal because many people dislike him. And in addition to that, the content that he's making right now is, uh, uh, I mean, I'm stuttering over it. It's so bad. It is, he's talking about the weather and he's
Mhm.
not doing anything. He's not making real content. And so John, the same thing, stuttering John, the same exact thing. This is a person who is not particularly likable. And in addition to that, he was making horrible podcasts. You used to listen to him clicking his keyboard and going, a whole bunch. So maybe I do need to renovate my previous answer regarding who my favorite lol cow is. Maybe Harrison Young is not a good answer to that because I think he's just likable. I don't think people
Mhm.
dislike him. I think the reason that we get drawn into him is not because there's something bad about him, but rather
Mhm.
because there's something enjoyable about what he does, and we
Very
want to
quirky
snap along
human.
with him.
Mhm.
Right. No, I do every time. The world will end if he changes the theme song. It has.
Has to
Agreed.
stay forever.
Agreed. I want a boombox on my desk because of him.
I forget about the boombox.
I love the boombox. I love the boombox. So that I guess favorite, and I think that definition also transcends the Dabbleverse because I think that would include people like DSP, Darkside Phil, the kind of like original lol cows. It would also include people like Aaron from Steel Toe Morning Show.
Mhm.
That is the thing, is that they are dislikable for one reason or another, and then in addition to that, they are making content that is not quality content. And
Right.
many of these people should be. John worked for Howard Stern and The Tonight Show. Why can't he use a microphone properly?
Mhm.
He worked for, some of the biggest shows in the world. And same thing with Opie. Why is he filming on his cell phone and lighting things poorly when he was on the biggest radio show of all time? Well, maybe he didn't know anything about lighting if he was on the radio, but
Right.
you kind of get the drift.
Or why he's drinking wine at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah,
allegedly.
that's a great question. Yes.
I don't want to get hit with a lawsuit, but allegedly, something weird going on with those lips.
That's the other difference between Opie and John, though, is I think John is litigious, and I don't think that Opie is like that. I think Opie realizes that the world is going to burn.
That's a great point. Yeah, yeah. Stuttering John has filed like. I mean, I know we don't. We have guesstimates that John is at or well below the poverty line at this point, and it makes you wonder how on earth has he been able to mount this many lawsuits in a short amount of time. And some of it I know was pro bono, but there's no way that he could be getting lucky all those times to have a lawyer that would see his case. But then again, I don't know.
Well, in addition to that, though, it's more the threat of lawsuits for him. I don't think
Right.
Opie has ever threatened to sue. Perhaps he has, and I'm just not remembering it. But John just likes to say, "Oh, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you," and that's scary. Lawsuits are scary.
Yes.
Opie, you're correct to say allegedly he's been drinking wine, but I don't think that if you didn't use the allegedly that he would sue you.
Probably not. And I will say, building on your point, that he really doesn't even. He's only recently started to acknowledge that you guys exist.
Yeah.
So
That's the other thing. He kind of had this whole like, whatever, I'm rich, I'm gonna do my thing, but now it's starting to get under his skin, which I'm happy with because it it gives us more content to watch. But that is another thing. So it's like I guess you could probably argue that Opie has a much longer fuse than John does.
Carl, Chris, and Adam Bush did a wonderful little segment on Opie just yesterday. So that would have been Wednesday, July 30th. And it was absolutely incredible. I would highly recommend if anybody who is listening to this is interested in a little bit of more Opie knowledge, I would highly recommend that one.
And I'm gonna check it out because for me the Opie content has been very captivating the last few months, especially since Anthony Cumia has gotten his radio show
on
Yes.
ABC New York.
So, moving right along, has there ever been a podcast on Who Are These Podcasts that you felt like maybe Carl or producer Chris were ripping on, or anyone else on the show for that matter, were ripping on, and you were like, I don't know, I kind of like this?
100%. Absolutely. Actually, one of my favorite guests that I now have on my channel, and I go on his channel sometimes is the Vern from Cinema Recall. And the way that the Vern from Cinema Recall got brought to my attention is that he was on Who Are These Podcasts?
Mhm.
And the guys were making fun of him. And I will be the first to admit, the Vern is a little bit socially awkward, but he
Mhm.
has great opinions on movies. He's really interesting. And what I realized when we were watching Who Are These Podcasts was that he's not the problem. It's his guests that are the problem. He doesn't
Ah.
always know how to control his guest.
Mm.
And that's a polite and wonderful thing. And I love that. And now I work with the Vern all the time. I love him. He is like incredible commentary, absolutely wonderful. I cannot say enough good things about him. He's hilarious, he's thoughtful. And again, his biggest flaw is that he's too nice. So when his guest is bombing, he doesn't just kick them off, He just lets it happen.
I think I remember that episode specifically because it was about a year and a half ago, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Because that was when Carl was basically picking random topics out of the hat, and the
topic
Yes.
was
movie talk. I don't think that was your pick, but it was somebody else's pick.
Yeah. I loved him.
So-
I thought he was great. And again, I still think he's great. The other perfect example of that actually is Doug from Good Times, Great Movies. So Doug is now a co-host or a guest host rather of Who Are These Podcasts, but he started out, they made fun of him way back in the day. He was one of
Wow.
the original podcasts that they made fun of. And again, us with movie podcasts are hard. It is
Yes.
hard to do a good movie podcast. There are always going to be lulls. There are always going to be times where you're amazing. There's always going to be times where you're absolutely horrible and bombing. And there's always going to be times where people just have different opinions than you.
Sure.
And Doug from Good Times, Great Movies, he took his appearance on Who Are These Podcasts and he turned it around. And now he's probably my favorite guest host of Who Are These Podcasts. He is hilarious. He is quick-witted. And his podcast is also amazing. There's definitely those boys, sometimes they get it wrong over at Who Are These Podcasts. I will be the first to admit that.
But overall, the odds are pretty good because we love you on Who Are These Podcasts. We love the show. We love Once Over with Cayley. And, speaking of, the Davilverse is ever growing, as is your channel. So what's coming down the pike for you in the next, let's say a few weeks? Because we'll probably put this show out in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. So I have lots and lots of exciting stuff. I'm actually going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about Triangle of Sadness. I'm going to be talking about a movie called Bad Johnson, which might be one of the worst movies I've ever seen, even possibly worse than One Too Many. And I think I'm going to be doing The Greasy Strangler coming up also, which will be fun and entertaining for sure.
Yeah, fascinating. And I'm sure that you're aware that the guy that made Greasy Strangler has a new movie coming out, Ebony and Ivory.
Yes, which I'm again very interested in.
Okay. All right. So, Cayley, how do we follow you? Where do we go? Social media, YouTube, Once Over with Cayley. Well, yes.
Once Over with Cayley, Cayley, and that is YouTube, Patreon. On Twitter, it's going to be Once Over Cayley because they have character limits in their usernames, which is just wonderful. But Instagram also Once Over with Cayley. And I'm just so excited that I got to do this with you. Thank you so much for having me.
No, Cayley, I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule because you wear a lot of hats. You're doing a lot of very fun, interesting things. I've been a big fan of you for a long time, and you and the gang, Carl, everyone. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk movies. And let's do this again. Maybe
someday
I
we'll
would
pick
love to.
yeah, we'll pick a movie and we'll just it doesn't even have to be a horror movie. I know that that's kind of my for obvious reasons, but we could talk about anything else if we need to. But you've been a delight. I've had a lot of fun with this interview, and you always have an open invitation on Count Drahoon Presents anytime you want to come on.
Well, thank you so very much. This again was absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you, Spooks and Spookettes, for tuning in. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, but be sure to join me next time for another edition of Interviewed by a Vampire or whatever else we've got cooking on CountDrahoon Presents. Until then, as far as things go when things go bump in the night, there are such things.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-legged beasties.
And things that go bump in the night. Good Lord!